The harsh realities that no one likes to hear, and the journeys that no one likes to see. Bringing you these journeys with the Insane Minds podcast. Here's your host, Sarvesh Maria.
Welcome. This episode was recorded in August 2022, but it was very difficult for me to launch this podcast earlier than it did. But today I had the honor to speak with Kara Frost, who's a senior tax accountant at world's second largest accounting firm named PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, let's jump into the interview with Kara Frost. Alright, Kara, let's jump into it. Please share with us how did you got into the industry and how did you actually become a tax lawyer?
Yeah, so, well, I will say that I don't think I necessarily thought this is what I would be doing when I first started college or anything like that. I definitely thought I wanted to be a lawyer throughout, middle school and high school. And I just kind of was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm going to aim for. When I got to college, I knew that I probably wanted to do a business degree. And I started taking my general accounting classes in my first year, and I really enjoyed them. And they made sense to me. I'm a really logical person, and so math-based things that have seemingly clear answers really appealed to me. Like a balance sheet has to balance, that type of thing made sense, and I liked the classes and the teachers. So I thought, okay, that's going to be my major, and I actually did a double major in accounting and economics because I liked the idea of understanding, a little bit also about how, economic factors play into business and all of that. And, I think that it was a good idea for me to broaden my horizons a little bit beyond just the one skill set. Um, and then when school was over, I had applied to go straight to law school, and I went to University of Maryland Law School um, directly after college. And as soon as I got there, the most common question I got from people was, "If you're an accountant, why are you coming to law school?" Um, which is, I think, a running joke with lawyers is that accountants are a completely separate career path. Um, but in fact, almost all of the people that I currently work with on my team, like that are higher up, have law degrees because what I specialized in actually really lends itself to being a lawyer because I do a lot of trust and estate work. But basically, in law schools as well, first year you take a bunch of general courses, and from there I kind of said, okay, now let me focus it up. I really liked my accounting classes. I'm going to go into like estate and trust and gifting space. And so I started taking all of those classes in law school. And while they don't have necessarily a tax law specialty at my school, I took pretty much all of the classes you could take in taxation. And yeah, that was really how my schooling career path went. Um, and when I came out of law school in 2012, I the law firm at first and was kind of discouraged. I graduated college in 2009, so like right after the financial crisis, which was like not an ideal time to be looking for a job, especially fresh out of school with not a lot of experience. And after I graduated from law school, I studied and took the bar, and then I actually ended up getting my first job through one of my friend's dads who was an accountant, and he he ran his own firm and had like a smaller practice, and he happened to do taxes for somebody who was a recruiter at BDO. And he said, "Oh, my daughter's friend from law school is an accountant, or she did an accounting undergrad, and she's looking for a job right now." And he said, "Oh, that's really interesting. You should say that. We are recruiting, and the team that we're looking for actually has a lot of lawyers on it. Why don't you send her my way? And so, I think that is certainly also one of those things where it's kind of like sometimes your opportunities come from a place that you don't expect. I certainly didn't think my time speaking with my friend's dad, listening to him talk about his accounting job that his daughter didn't ever want to hear about would lead to my first job. But yeah, that was kind of how I got started in the industry.
So, would you categorize your job as a tax lawyer being similar to CPA?
So I don't practice as a lawyer technically. My degree allows me to do what I do and practice, do sign returns, represent people before tax court if it ever got there. So I would never do that under my firm that I work at now, just because of limitations for risk management. But I work for PwC, so I am an accountant by trade. So I have a law degree, and I never actually practiced as a lawyer. And I think that was maybe one of the things the first year of law school that I realized was like, maybe what I thought being a lawyer was is not what I want to be. And it really is different than that. But I feel like I got the best of both worlds with where my job's at now, because I do spend a lot of time analyzing like documents, whether they be like trust documents or, reading laws and understanding them, applying them to my clients' situations. And I also didn't go into what I think a lot of people think of as a typical accounting field. Like, I think a lot of people spend time thinking about corporate finance or uh, dealing with bookkeeping and that type of thing. And I don't really do any of that. I work with high net worth individuals and do a lot of trust and estate planning. And so my focus is so much more around people and client service than it is around the like basic mechanisms of accounting. Um, and I actually really like that. So I get to see a lot of different things and interesting things. And, that's what keeps me coming back even after the long days and nights. The thing that makes the job enjoyable.
Yeah, you know what? I believe that as long as you're doing what you really love, it's not work anymore.
Yeah, and there are certainly times where it's unenjoyable. I will definitely be honest about that. And this this particular time period, like September to October, when we are in heavy compliance season, that's hard, but it's also like I have a really good group of people that I work with, and our job is collaborative, and we support each other through the late nights. Like if I'm online at 3 a.m., I at least know somebody else is there with me. We used to be in the office together, which you had a little bit more camaraderie, but at least I still have support from my teammates and stuff like that. And I think that it's when you get to deal with the most interesting and complex issues, even though it might not seem like a blessing in the moment when something crazy comes up. I definitely still get satisfaction and joy out of solving problems, even during the busy time.
Kara, it will be injustice to the people if we really don't talk about PwC and what it is. So please go ahead and tell our listeners what PwC is.
Yeah, so PwC is PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's the largest accounting firm in the world. And we do all sorts of different things. I'm sure, I think that people typically think accounting firms, they do accounting, and we do all that stuff. We do audits, we do tax, we do consulting. We have so many different departments that I can't begin to name them all. We do stuff that I don't even know that we do. And I find out when we have conferences, I'll be like, oh, I didn't even know we had people that do that within the firm. But I've worked for smaller firms and I've worked for mid-sized firms. And I came to PwC about 4 years into my career, and I've been here since 2017. And I have never had a better job than this, even through the struggles, and there have been definitely ups and downs of every job. But I think the biggest thing for me is that if you're working with a good group of people in this industry, and also PwC has such a vast array of resources at your fingertips, that there's always somebody that you can go to when you have issues come up. Like recently, I had a client who was buying a yacht in Malta, and we have a PwC office in Malta that primarily deals with this, because apparently, and like, how would anybody know this, but that's apparently one of the best places in Europe to buy a yacht for VAT tax reasons. And so a lot of people set up corporations there, and then you're able to like use the yacht throughout Europe without having to pay certain VAT taxes that you might otherwise be hit with. But like that, the fact that there's a person that specializes in that within the firm is just like, that's an example of the level of reach that the company has. And so I always think that that's interesting. And who would have thought that that'd be a problem I'm dealing with at work?
Then, is it that the company offers services only to US clients, or they do offer services to the clients all over the world?
Well, we do take clients all over the world. Primarily, I would say most of my clients are based in the US, but certainly when you're dealing with high net worth individuals, um, their reach is never just located within one country. So much of business and, investment is on a global scale these days. So there are foreign implications for almost every single client that I have. And beyond that, are they US citizens, residents, green card holders? Are they citizens of foreign countries? We deal with literally all of it.
You know what? As I'm interning right now, I learned that it requires a lot of paperwork and it consumes a lot of time for us to hire a person from overseas. So, will you say that you have to go through similar process when you deal with clients overseas?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And the good news is that, again, there's somebody in our firm who has dealt with it. So for us, typically, if we have a cross border client, so like, and I've definitely actually had this, I have a client who is from Canada. She lives in New York now. She's a US green card holder, which means that you are subject to US tax law if you're a green card holder, also if you're a resident, but there are some different implications. Um, and we have to work with her Canadian PwC team on how do things get reported on the Canadian return, because US tax takes precedent based on her green card holder status. And then from there, there's essentially like treaties that control how things get taxed cross border. And so, for instance, like somebody like this employee who's working in the United States has claim first to that income. And I would have to look at the treaty, but ultimately I would assume that there's probably in the treaty between the US and Canada that Canada's not going to tax wage income earned in the United States. But sometimes you have situations where like investment income might get taxed in both places. And then you have potential foreign tax credit implications. And certainly it's complex, but that's, again, like, I feel like those are the types of things with my job that I enjoy, is learning how to handle all these different situations for people, because there are endless scenarios. Everybody's is a little different, and that's what I think is interesting.
Got it. Then, which particular moment will you say that you learned the most from?
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe the things that I've learned the most from have come out of what I guess, mistakes or challenges. I certainly think that as I sit here and say, like, yeah, the most interesting things about my job is that there's all these various things, is that sometimes the biggest problems that we have are that you don't know something, and you don't know to ask about what you don't know. And we one time had a situation where there was a filing requirement for a foreign trust that one of my clients had. Um, and you have to file this specific form. It's not a form where you pay tax, but it's a disclosure form. And if you don't file it, there's really steep penalties. It's like 5% of the value of the trust. So if a trust that's overseas has millions of dollars of income, that could be a really large penalty, and all for failing just to file a piece of paper that is extending the date that you file a return. Um, and I will say that this is actually something the IRS is looking to roll back right now because of how onerous it has been on people, even when they're complying otherwise with the disclosure requirements. So it's not like income wasn't getting picked up properly or something like that. But, I realized that had been going on, and that this was something the taxpayer should have been filing. And, it was just one of those moments of like, I thought I was going to get fired. I was just like, how could we have missed this? But I didn't know that this was a thing. And, I immediately contacted the partner and was like, hey, I think this is going on, but like, I'm like obviously very distressed that I'm finding this because that's a really significant amount of money that the client might owe. Um, and, the first thing they said to me was, this is why you work for PwC. And I thought, what do you mean? And they were like, you work here because you're never the one that's like, yes, we're responsible for our clients, but like the firm has your back when stuff like that happens, and we're going to figure out how to deal with it. We have a tax controversies team. We have, you're not the one signing the return. We have partners and everybody else that also are responsible for these things. And this is something you're never going to forget in the future. Like, you're going to know. And this is why we have all the levels of review and teams that we have. But I think that what came out of that was feeling like, I'm never going to know everything, but like the way that stuff gets handled in the firm made me feel so supported. And that like you are going to always be learning new things. It's this ever evolving process, and no one person can possibly know all of the things there are to know about our job, but you will be able to get past those things when they're difficult, and be better for it.
So, will you say that every firm is like PwC?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that one of the things is that, again, like, we just have the vast amount of resources we have is something that I really like. A lot of people like working for a smaller firm. I did not like it because I felt like things were disorganized. And I don't really feel like the work was very much less. Like, there was still, the volume of work was the same, but everybody kind of doing their own thing. And for better or worse, because sometimes, standardizing things can feel challenging, but like, we have so much technology and things that make our lives easier. There are certainly times where we need better stuff, but like, the firm is willing to invest and support us in that. And that's definitely one of the things that I really, like about it, ever evolving. And I think that there's a lot of times where smaller firms tend to fall behind the curve on that stuff. And especially even in the last 3 years, we've had an insane amount of tax reform. I can't imagine trying to learn all of this stuff as a sole practitioner of a firm, or, just not having the level of knowledge and resources for training and growth that I have here.
No, for sure. But what's your opinion on the fact that like students should start from a smaller firm and then step it up to a bigger firm, or the other way around where they directly are looking for bigger firms?
I think it really just depends for everybody. I think that for me, I do feel like I'm glad I didn't start here. I think I was happy to come in as an outside hire and kind of have done my learning a little bit elsewhere, because certainly this is a much more fast-paced environment than where I started working. And not that, and BDO is also not a small firm, the first firm that I worked at, but the level of clients that I've seen since I moved to New York and the level of wealth and complexity is so much higher than anything I ever dealt with in DC where I started working. And so I think that that was maybe one of the most surprising things, and made me glad that I had learned the basics um, elsewhere and gotten my feet wet without, I guess, maybe as much of the pressure. But I think it just depends, you can either jump in, be first, and thrive. And I would hope that I would have done that if I started at the, this big four firm. But there's also opportunities in your career to move around if that's what you want to do. And I've seen plenty of people leave and come back and say, I maybe this isn't for me anymore, and I want to try something smaller. And then they've left and they've said that I just wasn't stimulated in the same way, and I missed doing this job, so I came back. And no, they don't miss the long hours, but they miss the way that they get to interact with their clients and things they get to learn.
I'm really curious to ask you, how long do you sleep, given the fact that you mentioned that not only that you work with highly net worth clients, but also the fact that it's your tax season and you have to complete all the books, which brings a lot of stress. So I'm really curious, how long do you sleep?
Yeah, so like right now, on average, since the beginning of September or like late August, I'm usually working like 60, 70-hour weeks. Um, and then as we get past September 15th to October 15th, which is like our peak deadline time, I usually work between like 80 and 90 hours a week. And that is not for everybody. It is really hard. I was going to say, but it's also a limited period of time. And it's like, I try at least to mentally prepare myself for it every year. There are days where it feels really bad, but there are also days where you just like crushing it, for lack of better terms. And you just like get through what you need to get through and get the work done. It's unfortunately so much of it is just driven by deadlines. Um, and all of the deadlines roll into each other. So for instance, our first deadline on 9/15 is going to be when entity tax returns are due. And so we get a lot of K1s that roll into our partners' returns, and you can't finish their returns until you get these. So it's just so much of it is dependent on each deadline that there's not a way to really accelerate all of the work. And that's why, it's just, it never really changes, that the deadline periods are very busy.
So let me go ahead and share a story with you. Recently, I visited my cousin, and she is a CPA. But we were having a conversation about becoming a CFA or CPA. But then she mentioned that she was actually going to become a CFA, but she saw what happened in 2008 financial crisis and how people were scared of investing. So she thought everybody has to file taxes no matter who it is. So she believed that CPA would be a better route. What do you think about that?
I mean, she's not wrong. This is an industry that, unless they just said, we're doing away with the tax code and we're going to do a flat tax for everybody, there is so much work to be done in this industry at all times. Like, there's jobs available. There's never not jobs available in this industry. Um, I think getting one that you enjoy is dependent on the quality of clients that you can get and the people that you work with, because you do spend a lot of time with your coworkers during your busy times. And if you have good quality clients that keep you interested and pay their bills, like it's one of those things where I've thought about would I ever want to work for myself, open my own practice or do something like that. And I don't know that I ever would, but primarily because I enjoy having so many people around me, being able to bounce ideas off of each other. But beyond that, like, you won't get the same level of clients and expertise that you are able to get working at a firm.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? I see people complaining all day long about their job, how it sucks and everything. But the thing is that, like either you should stop complaining or you should just leave the job, because in the end of the day there are other opportunities available for you. And I have a belief, as long as you're doing what you really love, you won't consider it as a work in the first place. You will just enjoy every moment of it. And also that, like when you do the work you really enjoy, I believe that you just learn so many new things and you just grow so much more every single day, that it really helps you. Not only, yeah, money is the good part of it, but it also helps you become a better person in general.
Right. And I think that that's certainly the attitude that you need to feel happy in any job. Like, there will be parts of every job, no matter what you do, that you don't like. But at the same time, if you can find one that outweighs the good and the amount that you learn outweighs the struggle, then I think that that's a good thing.
Absolutely. But what will you say are the common challenges faced by accountants?
Well, workload, the hours, like, that's one of the biggest things that I don't know that there's any way to really prepare somebody for what it's like to work as much as we do in a week. And obviously, there are other professions that deal with this too, like bankers, lawyers, doctors. We all have these crazy hours, but I don't know that anybody really tells you in college as much. Like, if you're going into public accounting, what the hours are actually like during busy season, because it's a lot. Um, I also think one of our biggest challenges right now is retaining people. I think that it's really difficult with COVID, um, and starting remotely, to really get people invested. There is a steep learning curve when you start this job. Um, and a lot of that is definitely easier to learn in person. And I certainly enjoy the flexibility of remote work, and do most of the time work remotely myself. But like, there is certainly something to be said about getting to be in the office with people and being able to learn in that way. So I think that, that's something that we've been talking about for 2 years now, is like, how do you get new staff invested, because they're at home doing what I'm going to call the grunt work right now, which is like a lot more of the, um, you know, data input part of it and less big picture analysis of stuff. And so we try to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to involve people in like understanding concepts, getting to be a part of client calls, getting to kind of have that type of experience. But it's certainly harder to do in a remote environment. Like, that's also part of the reason that I really wanted to move to New York when I first came here, is like that dream that you think about, that you see on TV, of like working in the big office building and getting to go into the city and that type of stuff. And yeah, that charm wears off, but like at the beginning of my career, I still think I would have wanted it. And now that's not what people are getting when you sit in your small apartment and work all day.
I agree with you. But then what you think about Great Resignation? Because in past 2 years, our organization had a turnover of 30 to 60 employees.
Yeah, that's so hard. And we definitely lost a lot of people. But we also got a lot of new talent in at the same time because people were looking for competitive jobs, right? And one thing that I think PwC did right was to really pay its employees. And I know like that's something that is lucky that we're able to do that because certainly I know that that's a struggle that y'all have had at Southern Wesleyan is competitive pay versus other places when you're working for a smaller university and being able to draw people in when you can't necessarily offer what somebody else could for the same or similar position. Um, but that's definitely something that I think they did right. But I also don't know what it holds. Like we've definitely seen in people coming in that have not been in this job for a long time that it's a lot harder to retain them. Like we did have a lot of people quit after a couple of years. They said, I don't want to do this work anymore when it's so much. I could probably go somewhere else and get paid about the same, but your opportunities for growth are going to decrease. So it's hard to say what's going to happen with that. I think it's something that every line of industry is working with. I hear my clients talking about it. We're talking about it. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the long run, but I also think there's something to be said for, committing and working to move up in the place that you're in. And so that's something that I hope people see the value in staying.
Yeah, for real. But earlier you mentioned that your clients are high net worth people. But is that you really don't take on clients which are not as much high net worth? I don't think I can describe it in a number format, but do you have a criteria which you go by when you differentiate between high net worth and I'll say non high net worth people?
Yeah, specifically for my team, we do not manage. We don't have like a cutoff that says your AGI has to be X number. But you know, we're dealing with like billionaires and multimillionaires is primarily our client base. So mostly like hedge fund managers and investment managers is like the bulk of our stuff. And then also just generational wealth, which there is a lot of here in New York City. So
Cool. But I'm curious, how busy did you got during that stock market mania while COVID was going on in 2020 and 2021?
so I don't know that it necessarily I think our work in terms of like that side of things for trading, I know that like our investment managers of our clients were very, very busy with all of that. We're dealing right now with filing all those tax returns for 2021. And so what we see on the flip side is our clients owing a ton of money. And like obviously we've, prepared for that and calculated it for them. But I think the the seeing how much money was made in the stock market in 2021 is pretty wild. It Everybody did well.
I agree with that. But I believe that not only a lot of people made a lot of money, but there were also people who lost a lot of money, including hedge funds. And it was such a surprise to me. Like these people are like in the industry for so long, they got so much experience. Still, they made huge mistakes and ruined their whole career.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it's interesting because stuff like that happening. I don't. I guess I just am like I don't know that I would have seen so many of my clients be open to being in that situation. I guess like I feel like their investments are so diversified that they're fairly well protected. But yeah, I mean, I had one client who made a lot of money from, he just happened to own a ton of Moderna stock when they got the vaccine patented or, approved. Like, those shares went for an insane amount of money then. But he didn't buy them because of COVID. He just owned them and made a lot of money on it. I have another client who does medical supply sales. Their, income went up $50 million in 2020. It was crazy. That would have never happened if the pandemic hadn't happened. So you just saw these changes that seemed really unpredictable um, for certain industries, which was very interesting.
So, is it true that in New York, some of the hedge funds just see a lot of success very quickly, and there are other hedge funds as well who lose everything very quickly as well?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's definitely interesting to watch the development. I have a few clients whose funds are maybe 3 years old at this point, and you see the first year is just like no income, nothing's going on. 2 years later, they're earning millions of dollars, and it really is interesting to watch that happen from inception. When you're like, how is this ever going to make money? And then it just takes off. So definitely dealing with a lot of that, and especially around like carried interest income for these clients, and how to plan and deal with all of that.
So now we both know that on one side there are firms like PwC who does the accounting for their clients, but on the other side there are apps built up now like TurboTax where people can file their taxes on their own for free. First of all, do you believe is it good for someone to file their taxes by themselves? Second thing, what will force them to hire a firm like PwC to do their taxes?
So I think that you get into a space of needing someone to help you when you have what I'm going to call not an ordinary situation. If you get a W-2, and that's like all you're getting, I'm fairly confident that you can file your own taxes or do it in TurboTax, whatever it might be. I will say that as a general rule, they all say they're free, but if you have any, what I'm like, non-standard forms, so if you have investment income, so if you get 1099s for interest or a brokerage account or anything like that, they start to charge you money to complete your returns. So they're free to an extent, but for a lot of people, they're not free. They also are a lot cheaper than hiring an accountant to do your work. And if what you have is just a bunch of standardized forms, those programs do a great job. They actually really do a good job of picking up the income, putting it on your return, and calculating things correctly. They ask you a lot of prompting questions about life events and that type of stuff. And I do think that for the majority of people, they probably do an okay job at doing your taxes. I think you need somebody to do them when you are in a situation where you have a complex matter. So, are you getting, do you have a Schedule C? Do you need to be analyzing like a profit and loss statement of what you've done during the year? Do you have K1s? Do you have complex treatment where you might not? So for like K1s, you have passive investments where losses might not be allowed in a certain year? Do you have significant amounts of income where you need to be doing estimate planning because you can have underpayment penalties for not paying in enough tax during the year? I think that when you start to get into those types of questions, do you have foreign stuff happening? Then maybe it's worthwhile for you to be looking to somebody who can help you to manage the risk there associated with filing your tax returns.
Makes sense. But is there any tool or resource that is not available but you would love to have? which you believe will help you tremendously?
I would say the number one thing that I think we all wish we had was something that could read and process K1 footnotes. I don't know that that's ever going to be a thing that exists, but there's a lot of technology out there that reads standardized forms. So a K1 is a standardized form, and on the face of it, it has a lot of numbers. Great. Those can be picked up easily. The things that actually matter about how do you report that income tend to be footnotes that come with the K1, how to treat it. And there has never been a technology that's been invented that can handle that. And the reason is because it's not standardized how all of that stuff is presented. And so that is something that always has to be analyzed. But if that existed and they could just be read and put into the return and then I could review it for correctness, that would save so much time.
Maybe the tech companies needs to hear that and they can get to work so they can make a product for you. But you have a lot of experience behind your back. I'm curious what you believe or what you think about school and college education. But on the other hand, there is e-learning sites now, e-learning courses and YouTube as well. Do you believe that college and school education still plays an important role in becoming what you really want to become?
I think that the foundations definitely matter. The education that you're going to get in school and understanding, and also this profession as a whole has a really strict guideline of around what you have to have in terms of learning. Like you can't sit for a CPA license without a specific amount of schooling credit. Um, so it's invaluable in the sense that there's a level that you can get to without a professional license in this industry. But once you hit that, if you don't get it, you can't go any higher. You can't be signing tax returns. You can't be operating in a level that allows you to do anything except prepare. You would never be allowed to be on a power of attorney for a client if you don't have a license. So there's a ceiling that you're going to hit where if you don't have the college education and then sit for your license, you won't be able to go further. But I also think that I didn't learn 90%, maybe 95% of what I use at my job in school. Like, you learn so much when you get there, and beyond that, what you think it's going to be is not what it is when you're actually there. And so, actual experience is invaluable. And we don't expect people to come into this job knowing how to do it. We probably expect that you've seen a tax return and have done your own taxes at some point. However, the rest of it, we're going to teach you. And you're going to have the foundation based on what you've learned prior to that. But there's also so much other stuff that you can learn that's useful. We've had like technology competitions in the firm where people come up with ideas for bots that can automate things to make all of our lives easier, whether it's like putting in your time or something more technical. There's just so many opportunities and different skill sets. So if you have interest for other outside things that you do e-learning for and stuff like that, that's great. And especially data-driven stuff is the next big frontier for accounting now. Like trying to use data to get better automations and presentations and modeling for our clients. That's like the next big thing that everybody's working on.
Sweet. But you know what? You mentioned that you and your team is looking towards more of having a data driven approach for managing accounts. Now, I request you to provide a process or a stair step pattern in which college students and other students as well who are looking forward to become accountants like you and your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that while you're in school, if you can do an internship, do an internship. You will get to see how things operate day to day in the profession, and that will be really useful to you when you're starting out. I think a lot of times we're told that, and it might be easier said than done, but, you don't have to get an internship at the Big Four if you have a local accounting office that you can get an internship at. It's great if you can get the type of experience for the job that you are aiming to get, but, I think practical approaches to learning, get mentors, talk to people who have been in the industry, and start networking, because finding a job, like I said in the beginning of this, like finding a job can sometimes come from the most unexpected places. And nobody goes any of this stuff alone. So the more people you know and who can help to give you a leg up as you're starting to look for a job, the better. So much of my job is actually based around building relationships with people, and I think that that's a skill that is undervalued in the way that we've been working lately, because we're so separate from each other in this remote environment. But ultimately, yeah, try to get an internship while you're in school. And then I honestly, for somebody who is going to go into accounting, if you're not doing what I did in going to law school, if you're going to get your master's, and a lot of times you can do that right after, but that is usually what gets you to the hours requirement for being able to sit for your CPA. The master's in tax program, I know, is like 1 year of additional school. Also, if you start working, you can sometimes get the firm to pay for that. And I certainly recommend that anything that the firm will pay for you to do to learn more, let them pay for it. As somebody with student debt, and also as somebody who has let them pay for me to go to conferences and learn about things that I'm interested in that can maybe benefit our clients, that's a really good opportunity if you can do it while you work. But I also understand that that's difficult, and it's a lot to go to school and have a job. So yeah, I think that's really the path. But it's about getting yourself out there and meeting people and getting some experience.
Wow, what a conversation. Kara, but before you leave, I would like you to give our folks your contact information where they can contact you and ask any questions, or if they need help with just figuring some things out in their own journey, their own paths of life, and in becoming an accountant. So please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm happy to have people email me. You have my contact information. That would be completely fine.
All right. For those people who need Kara's information, just DM me on Instagram page, Twitter page, or YouTube comment section, and I'll send it to you. All the above mentioned social media websites have the common name, The Insane Minds. And Kara, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was my honor to have you here. There were a lot of things I didn't know about, but you kind of clarified a lot of things, and I really appreciate the transparency. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. And hopefully you and my mom continue to have a great time working together. But it was great to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Insane Minds podcast.